Changing the world, one coffee mug at a time. You're listening to The Bearded Theologians, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about The Bearded Theologians, you can go online at www.beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to The Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
This week on The Bearded Theologians, we're going to talk about the word fellowship and how it works within, not only in our ministry context, but also how we feel about fellowship. And so, Zach, as we think about that word fellowship, what kind of comes up to you in your brain?
Fellowship, I don't know. I think what I picture on fellowship is, I'm so Methodist. I think of food. I was trying to think of something more profound than food, and all I can think about is food. I think of potlucks and barbecues and things like that, but I guess that's what brings us together. But the fellowship is the conversation, is getting together, getting to know each other, on whatever level that is, whether it be through a very brief, simple conversation or into a deep theological conversation. But I mean, on the basic level, I think to me that's what fellowship is. What about you?
Well, of course, food would be the mainstay of my conversation because fellowship and food, like almost they have to go together. If not, then you've definitely broken covenant with God, and you must make amends. But the other thing too that we're very Wesleyan in our approach. The other thing that I've been thinking about, and this is something that's been very helpful for me in the summertime, and actually this fall, the last few weeks in the fall, I've been playing softball with a whole other church, and it's a whole other Methodist church in Tulsa, and I've really enjoyed getting to know the people at university. And my whole role there is I just show up, and I am the pitcher, and I'm one of the better hitters, and my job is to make sure that we do the making sure that everybody gets out and all the right things, sort of. But for me, it's been a time of getting to know people where I'm not having to work, and to me, that's what true fellowship is. It's not work. It's just simply getting together and saying, hey, what's going on? And I think you can do that over food, and I think you can do that on the softball field or on the basketball court or in a craft. If there are people that get together and craft together or play board games together. I know, like at your house, every so often you offer a board game night, and I think that those acts of fellowship, one, it helps us let down our guards for us to be able to talk in a relationship where it's not necessarily structured to, in a Bible study, which is what we talked about last week or a couple of weeks ago, there's an intentional thing there. You're there to have true, deep faith conversations, whether it's over a set of scripture or a book you're studying or whatever. But I think when it comes to fellowship, that's not necessarily on the table, but it's amazing to see how many times in those fellowship events end up moving towards that conversation. And so, Zach, as we continue this conversation, what are some other things that kind of come up for you?
Sure. There's definitely a comfort level that comes with no expectations. Like you say, sitting in a Bible study, and so much of what you and I do, when we walk into a room, there's a certain expectation, whether we're in the church or not, that's what we want to talk about. And I love the church. I love what I do, but I don't always want my conversations to revolve around that. I like other things. I like baseball. I like food. To name a couple. And so it's nice to be able to walk into, like the board game night at my house, for instance. You mentioned that we play games. We talk about just stuff, and like you say, sometimes that comes back around into a deeper conversation, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just laughing and having a great time. And I think all of those things put together is what leads us into those deeper conversations, what leads us into, spiritual conversation. We can't just jump right in. We can't jump headfirst into really not very deep water. We got to build those relationships. And so these fellowship, just getting together, having a cup of coffee, playing some board games, having a meal, whatever it is, passing somebody in the grocery store. Those are the foundational elements to fellowship that lead into deeper conversations. And I think they're so important. I think it's something that, we've lost a little bit in our culture since we're not so face-to-face anymore. We do so much through texting and social media and all that stuff. And that's why we're here. I mean, technically, we're in fellowship right now. I used air quotes. I don't.
That's not what my wife calls this, but we won't get into that.
We won't. But that's what we're trying to do here, is create space for people to fellowship, to have a conversation on whatever level that is for them. And so, I mean, obviously, I think it's important, and I think it's a needed thing. But if we're willing to come together as people in fellowship, we're willing to come together as people in worship and into deeper things.
Well, and I think that's the deal, is that when we talk about fellowship, we find ourselves lost sometimes because we don't know what to do, or we'll walk in and we don't know how to act. And it's learning the language, like I've been playing on the softball team now for 3 years, and I just feel like I'm now kind of like I'm one of the guys or guys and girls. It's a co-ed team. And so I really feel comfortable where I'm able to be vulnerable, or, I can be mad there, and I can be, when I've had a rough day, I can come out to the field and I can be me and let it out, where there's so many times where that's not necessarily the case. And that's why fellowship is healthy, because it allows us to be vulnerable in a different way, but in a truly authentic way that does allow deep conversation to have. And it may not even be spiritual. It may just be somebody that's hurting, or maybe a change that they're going through in their life. And I think of the fellowship that we have online, not only through this, but through Xbox, and thinking about some of the relationships that we've been able to establish and create, and how we've been able to affect lives just by being ourselves in fellowship. Not with an intentional purpose in mind of evangelism or bringing people closer to God, but I think that, like, when we play our video games of Destiny, it really is just about a common community achieving a common goal, beating the raid. And so as we think about fellowship, I think we should continue to have that conversation. What does that look like? How can that work in today's world of being really digital? And not necessarily, how I feel like a shift is coming. I think we've gone so digital that now we're starting to get back into home groups and, times of fellowship. But I think that we've got to nurture both. But I think that we have to continue working towards actual physical, because the physical, actually being with people, is very healthy, studies have shown. And so that's
and I think the word that just rings true to fellowship is being vulnerable. And that doesn't mean we walk into a room, we just air everything that we have. It takes time, and it takes those relationships to build up before we can truly allow ourselves to be vulnerable. That's a scary place to be. I just, we all do it. I've watched people do it. They do it with me. One of the first questions that we ask people just getting to know them is, well, what do you do? And any time that I lead with, well, I'm a pastor, that changes the conversation. People are almost immediately less willing to be vulnerable and go into this mode of, oh, I've got to say this and do this. And we do that, though. We as pastors do that. We walk into a room and we kind of present ourselves a certain way, say the right things. I think there's a fun term called code switching or something like that. When you're in a certain group of people, you act a certain way. When you're in this group of people, you act that way because that's what's expected of you. And to be in true fellowship with people means you let all that down. You become vulnerable in that and be who you are. And when you're able to do that, you're with a group of people who are who they are, and they're willing to have that back and forth and be vulnerable and, meet you where you're at. And ultimately, I think that's what Jesus did. That dude was Jesus in every room he walked into. And I think it gave people a certain comfort to know, hey, I can be me too. And we see through scripture the conversations that he had and things that he did, all because he was in fellowship with people. So I think you're right. I think we're about to hit this shift, or we're entering into this shift that things have become so digital that people are I don't know, hungry for interaction, hungry for fellowship.
I think longing for true interaction, true authentic relationship, because we've become such a meme driven, Reddit reading world that we have truly lost the art of just getting together and opening up a board game and open up some cornhole and do it right. And I think that's where college, there's one thing that college football does get right. And I just went to a college football game about a week ago, or actually 2 weeks ago now. And the fellowship, the physical fellowship, you don't see that on CBS or ESPN. Sponsor, not sponsor. You don't get that kind of fellowship, but the fellowship that you do get when you're watching a game together, it right. happens, but it's not the same. I mean, I have to admit, I've watched a lot of Arkansas football games on the TV. It ain't nothing like going there in person. And now, like, I've got this fever, like, man, I really want to go again. And that's what, that's what church should be like.
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite experiences going to baseball games, I've sat all over parks. I'm too cheap to sit very close, but I've sat in the outfield in a lot of parks. And my favorite place to sit, it was in Texas Ranger Stadium. They were playing the Cubs, tons of Cubs fans in town. And we sat like 5 rows from the very, very top of the stadium. And it was the most fun at a baseball game that I've ever had. And it's that atmosphere. I've never given people hugs and high fives and talked about baseball, about life, about just anything like I did at that game, because, you're there for a common reason. Whether you're a Cubs fan or a Rangers fan, you get excited about what's going on, and that atmosphere is there. And so you're right. Maybe not just college sports, but maybe a lot of sports get it right in that aspect of, man, I don't know you, but high five, they just did great,
And maybe that's why the passing of the peace is so important. And if we do it right, we create an atmosphere where people can feel welcome, and people know that there are people who are going to be genuinely there with them. And a healthy indicator in church, a healthy indicator for churches is, is the pastor having to stay, or is the staff having to stay for extra long time because people are just congregating in the hall? We ended worship at 11:30 on Sunday. We for some reason, we were led by the Spirit to blaze through the worship. We made it through 45 minutes at 11:30. The last people left at 12 o'clock. Mm-hmm. We had groups of people that were just there fellowshipping, and I'm not going to break that up. I want them to have that true relationship. I want them to have that community where people know that, hey, after worship, we can either talk about what was happening, or we can talk about where we're going to eat, or we can just talk about being together. And I think that that's what fellowship is.
See, and that's our little campus here. That's what they do. They're not worried about beating the Baptist to church or to lunch. They have a fellowship every Sunday afterwards. They bring some light snacks, and like one Sunday a month, they bring a meal. But they spend the 20, 30 minutes, whatever they spend after the service, down in the basement fellowshipping with each other. And I'd love to go hang out with them. I'd much rather do that than usher everybody out of the door so they can get there before the Baptists or the Catholics or whoever. No, who cares? Lunch is going to be there. These people are here right in front of you. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I'll stay all day. If that's what it is, if they just want to hang out and fellowship, great.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I'm glad they bring food, so it makes it a touch easier.
Yeah. So, Zach, as we bring this to a close, I want us as a body, this bearded theologian's body, however you conceptualize that, whether you're listening to it on your drive home from seminary, or drive home from work, or drive home from somewhere, or you're listening to it, just sitting at home. I want you to think about how can you work on your fellowshipping and make it better, because when we do, and we make it adamant part of our lives, it'll be amazing to see how God works through that. And so, keep
I like that.
Towards better fellowshipping.
I like that call to action. Very, very intentional. How are you going to be intentional this week and in the coming weeks to be in fellowship with people? I think that's good. Well, we want you to be in the conversation with us. Check us out, or wherever you're listening to us, whatever you're listening on, hit us up on Facebook. Tell us how you're in fellowship with people. Tell us what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. Those are all good things. Don't forget to check out our website, beardedtheologians.com. You can buy mugs just like that one Franks is holding. You can buy shirts. You can buy baby onesies. Those of you having babies, buy a onesie. They're awesome.
To interrupt you, I'm now buying those for people in our church that are having babies. It's a shameless plug, but you know what? They're so cute. Like
They're adorable. Check out our Instagram. You can see a picture of one there from last week. But we want to, all the money that you spend there helps us do this even better and longer. It helps, all the money goes back into the podcast. So we want to thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. It is Pastor Appreciation Month, and we want to lift up our hashtag pastornotourpastor this month of Bishop Cynthia Harvey. She's doing awesome work out in the Louisiana Conference, and she was a guest on our podcast just a few weeks ago. So Bishop Harvey, keep up the good work. Thank you for being an awesome pastor. Couple other things we want to lift up. We're rocking and rolling with our blogs. We've had several contributors over the last few weeks. Big thanks to Leah Daniels, who has contributed a couple powerful stories. My wife, Michael Bechtold, was our contributor this last week, talking about weakness to perfection. And we have a couple of special guests, Peter White and Matt Bridges, coming up over the next couple of weeks. So don't forget to check us out on the blog, and those who are contributing there. Check us out on iTunes, on Google Play, YouTube, Facebook, the Instagrams, and the Twitter. Leave us comments, leave us feedback, let us know how we're doing, ask your questions. But we appreciate your support. We appreciate you checking us out. And until next time, for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Zach Bechtold.
And I'm Matt Franks.
Thanks for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the conversations that we've had today on the Bearded Theologians Beardcast, and we'd encourage you to continue those conversations online at beardedtheologians.com or on our Facebook page. We also hope that you pick up a couple of coffee mugs to satisfy your coffee mug collection. Have a good day.